Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining the LaunchPad Associate Workshop Series. The Associate LaunchPad Workshop Series is a support vehicle for associates to learn about the various books of the PGM program for Level 1. We are excited and grateful to have Arvo Voip joining us this afternoon to present on cart fleet management. Arvo, for those of you that don't know Arvo, he is the head golf professional at the Springs Country Club in, I believe it's Rancho Mirage or Palm Desert. I think it's a Rancho Mirage address. Arvo's been there for a couple of seasons now, and he's actually got a great story, which we'll hear about here shortly in his introduction on how he came to be the head golf professional there at the Springs. And Arvo is going to be presenting on cart fleet management today, which is an integral part of a golf professional's duties. Actually, when we talk about dollar value in the assets that we're responsible for, there's really no bigger responsibility that the golf professional oversees because of all the dollars that are tied up either in a long-term lease or in the ownership of cart fleets at various clubs in around the country. Arvo, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us on the Associate LaunchPad Workshop Series.
Good afternoon. Thanks again, John. It's my pleasure to do this again. I know, like you just mentioned, cart fleet management is definitely not the draw when we get into this business, but when you get down to it, it is one of the, one of our most important day-to-day operations, and it also surely reflects your bottom line.
Absolutely. And if you don't have your hands wrapped around it, it can get away from you and get sideways real quick.
And that, so I got a couple here. We'll get started here. John was talking, I became head professional here. I used to do it back and forth between Northern California and Southern California. Once my kids got of age here, I had to choose where I was staying, and so I've stayed here in the desert. Summers aren't as great, but winters are better, so it's a good trade-off. As we get into cart fleet management, before I go on to the slides, again, this is something that is pretty much cut and dry through the PGA. When you're doing your portfolio and your portfolio work, they have a set of parameters that they go by. And so for your testing of this, it's very important to know what numbers they were using and how they structured the format. The beauty of cart fleet management is there's some standards that you have to meet, but after that, there's a lot that is up to you to decide and to put your own policies and procedures to, and it's unique to each facility. So we'll go ahead and get started. The introduction, I think this is a little bit outdated as it goes back to the 1950s on 40. There's a million golf carts plus these days. I know golf's booming right now. If any of you are at private clubs or have people that have their own carts, their own private carts, you're seeing more and more private carts, more and more really expensive private carts. And that golf carts themselves, every facility has golf carts. You need a fleet of golf carts to operate at any level. I always break it down. I only have 20 carts here because I have a lot of member carts, which can be a challenge when we do any kind of charity events or stuff like that. I'm not responsible for renting carts, and it makes it that much more important to take care of our carts. There are the three major manufacturers, and they offer all the same products, and when we get down to that, it's you have to decide whether you're going gas, and we'll get into this farther, gas, battery, whether it's, we just got a new fleet, and one of the big things was what kind of batteries are we going with, the lithium, or are we going, and of course we went lithium here, a little longer life expectancy, but again, that jacks up those costs on the back end. The importance of an efficient functional cart fleet, it's your day-to-day. It's the first thing your customers, your members see. It's what they spend their most time with. It reflects directly on how you run your facility. And so this is a very important part of the PGA program here. All right, so into choosing the correct cart fleets. I was in the mountains for years. Gas was much better. the electric motors didn't last as long. First of all, with altitude and hill climbing and up and down. And so the electricity costs were a lot more out rurally. So we'd go gas there. Here, you know, there's no reason to have gas carts. And I'm sure you're going to see in the near future as states like we're in California going to electric cars by 2035. I doubt you're going to see many gas carts left in the next handful of years. When it comes down to leasing and buying carts, that's the biggest decision you have to make. Depends on your facility. Most private facilities will purchase their carts. It turns into an asset. You have the money on hand. A lot of the public and resort facilities, you're going to put so much wear and tear on them. And if you take a lease, you have a set cost. Usually, and we'll get into it again, you have a maintenance contract if you decide to take one with the cart company. The size of your fleet is huge. You have to make sure you have the right amount of carts to service your customer base and to handle any events that you're going to host. But then you can't have too many carts because you're paying a lot of money for each cart. So if you have carts that aren't getting used, they're not making any revenue, they're pretty much useless to you. They're a cost. Cart amenities. See a lot of carts now have the GPS in them. Again, that's facility based. You'll see your resorts, your public courses, a lot more of the GPS systems in there. Ball washers and coolers. Again, that's facility based. Our carts, my carts here, we purposely got them without coolers. Most of the members have coolers, and we try to keep from having the party groups out on the golf course, and so we just decided no coolers for these. All right, pricing your fleet properly. There's a lot of great resources through the PGA. You can Google search it. Most carts, you know, there's a general area run somewhere $20 to $25. Some places a little bit more. You have to be careful with your pricing of carts. You don't want to, you want people to use carts. You also want people to walk, but you don't want to push people away from taking golf cart. Again, these days, most golf courses are cart inclusive. You're seeing very fewer and fewer that are promoting walking. And again, that comes down to your revenue. Your fees for your carts. As we come out of COVID, I know this has been challenging on our end, but as we've got back to the more traditional 2 carts per foursome, it's been a little bit of a push with people still wanting single rider carts. If you only have one person in the cart, you're making less money for it. So it's, you know, if you don't have one, it's a good idea to look into a single rider fee. It'll also discourage a lot of people that don't want to pair up, and they'll reluctantly pair up. But it's, I've seen that a real challenge here in the last 6 months is getting people to pair up in golf carts. They kind of got spoiled with being able to do single rider carts through COVID. And again, spectator fees, that's facility by facility, but if you're sending your cart out on the golf course, we need to be turning some revenue for it. So always a good idea to have a spectator fee. All right, one of the very most important parts of your cart fleet is how you maintain it. Your outside staff, who's in charge? I'm fortunate here. I have a full-time cart mechanic who kind of runs our outside, is also in charge of our outside staff. You're making sure that you have the right staff and trained right to clean your golf carts, keep your golf carts looking good, operating good. Being like I have here, I have a full-time mechanic. A lot of places aren't able to have a full-time mechanic. If we didn't have so many private carts around the community, we wouldn't be able to have that full-time mechanic. So there's always cart shops in your area that have mechanic services. And there's also maintenance contracts through whoever you're purchasing your carts or leasing your carts from. It's really important to follow the basics. These carts will last a long time if you keep up with the upkeep. You know, when you're talking about rotation schedules and basic maintenance, keeping water in the batteries. If you're on gas carts, making sure the engine's tuned, keeping air in the tires and keeping your cart clean will keep these carts looking good and lasting for a much longer time. Broken and inoperable carts. I hope everybody has some kind of paperwork for this, because again, we're in a litigation happy society these days, and if you don't have proper documentation, sometimes it's hard to collect on cart agreements where somebody has broken a cart. In this instance, having something that either your outside staff or whoever is in charge of maintenance for your golf carts, that they can keep it reported, and you can keep a log on what's been done on golf carts. Make sure it's done in a timely manner. A cart sitting is a cart you're just paying for. We're gonna move on to the staff, which I got into a little bit. So with the rental policies, depending on your insurance, we're at a here where we require 18 and over. Some places it's 16. Making sure that when a cart goes out, it's being signed for and that people agreed to the rental agreement. We don't require a driver's license. We do require the age, but we do require that somebody has signed out for the golf cart and has taken responsibility. Safety procedures. A lot of carts these days, again, GPS will keep you from going certain places. Signage on golf courses and on your carts to let you know where carts can and can't go. I dealt with this at a resort course I was at. We had public roads that ran through the golf course and a lot of rental condos, and people would take off the golf course and drive down to the condo to grab something. Making sure that you have somebody that can enforce those policies, because you are responsible for those golf carts. Accident reporting, again, real important to have a paper trail of any accidents that occur on the golf course, who was involved, what was damaged on the golf cart. And it's very good to keep a detailed record of anything that does happen with your golf carts there. Your training of staff and safety procedures. Most of us use younger individuals for this. This is making sure your staff is aware of dangers of a golf cart, along with making sure that the staff is respectful of members, guests, any of your customers, and making sure that your outside staff is properly trained. Training goes a long ways. I'm getting ready to do that next week. We're going to be training a whole new outside staff, which is always a little apprehensive, but hopefully we got a good staff this year. Making sure those policies and procedures, and this is also covered under a couple other levels, and this is your policies and procedures, making sure that you have proper written documentation and you've trained your staff properly on what your individual facilities, policies, and procedures are for safely operating, cleaning, and storing golf carts. All right, we're going to move on to what are the activities in your portfolio. This is, again, as you go through this, it's everybody's operation is a little different, but when it comes down to it, the nuts and bolts are the same. So hopefully your golf professionals at your club are very open to letting you see what you're paying for golf carts, what labor costs are for golf carts. If not, there's always somebody around that can help you out with that. But it's, basically following down the list, your facility info, including your mission statement, what is the operation intended to do, documents and procedures used for this report. Going through those again are your training procedures, what your leases are, and that, let's see, and then we move on to describe your facility fleet operations. And again, all this is you showing what your facility is. I know in our doing the portfolio, it can be a little tedious, but you really need to go into some detail in what your fleet and what the responsibilities of everybody are to operating a successful fleet at your club, and hopefully it is successful. The maintenance, cleaning procedures, daily checklists, those are we've talked about, is making sure that as you're going through your portfolio, you go through the cart rotations, and whether you have somebody that is responsible for putting water in the batteries, checking air in the tires, all those procedures, along with your daily checklist of making sure the cart is put away clean, plugged in, charged, lights are off if they have lights on it. Describe any safety checks and weekly checklists. This is something that if you have an outside supervisor, you hope that they complete this. You want to make sure that they have their sheets to know what they are responsible for the week. And then, of course, the moments of truth. Your golf fleet is one of your original moments of truth. People come walking down, they see your carts staged, however you stage them. First thing they look at is what kind of shape the carts are in. And I'm sure we've all been in that boat. We've shown up to a golf course. It could be a really good golf course, but you walk up and you see a cart that's got a bald tire, or a tire that's a little low, and seat's got a cigar burn in it, and the windshield's got a crack in it, and instantly that's going to affect how you feel about showing up to that facility. So as a moment of truth, your golf cart fleet is usually one of your first two moments of truth that a customer has when they get to the golf course. Going on with your staff size, operations all vary. Because I only have a 20 cart fleet, we have a very small staff. We have 1 to 2 people in the afternoon. If you have if you're at a large facility that has a lot of golf carts, you may have 4 or 5 cleaning up. The more you have, of course, the more of the pyramid you have going. You're going to have whoever's in charge, who's overseeing underneath that. Very important to go through what your training methods are, because training is huge when it comes to this. If you train properly one time, you don't have to keep retraining throughout the year or throughout the season. Golf cart rental policies and procedures, we went over those. Those are what you allow, who you allow to take a golf cart, rent a golf cart, what's your rental agreement. And there's some good ones again on the PGA that if you don't have an intercourse, it's not a bad thing to pull one of them off the PGA. You may have to tweak it a little bit according to your insurance or your regulations, but you got to have something for people to sign out to. The golf cart rotation storage procedures, we went over that. Safety measures and accidents. And then, of course, the record keeping practices. And keeping track of all your maintenance, everything that you've done on the golf carts. It's important when we get into budgeting and how much money we're allotting to our maintenance and to our golf cart fleet. These we don't have to really talk about. You're just uploading some stuff. A couple examples of a closing checklist or a cart barn cleanup. I'm sure every one of our facilities has something like this. It's never a bad idea to revisit it, on a quarterly, 6-month, year, depending on how busy you are and how you see rounds changing, just to make sure that everything is time efficient. And labor's hard to get, and labor costs are going up. The more efficient we can be with these, the better off we are. A little look, this is their sample on the finances for a golf cart. As you look through this, these are pretty straightforward. This is what you're going to use in your testing in your portfolio. So the prices are a little higher today. I don't know if anybody's had to go through purchasing golf carts here recently, but the cost of golf carts has went through the roof in the last 2 years. Going over here is just a lithium cart on a 60-month lease. This is talking for 80 carts. This is pretty standard. Again, I believe the prices went up a little from this. I didn't look at a lease here, but it's if you can't get one from your from your club, these are great ones to use. And I think with that, we've actually run through the cart fleet management. If there's any questions on this, I can't stress enough that this is a, let me make sure that was it. Yeah. I can't stress enough that this is a very important part for to becoming a PGA professional. It's, again, not something that we look forward to, but it's definitely something that is going to affect your facility greater than most. And so it's very important to just spend a little time going through this. If you're not in a position where you're doing a lot of work with the cart fleet at your course, ask to help out. Ask to be a little bit more in the know about it. It's one.
Hey, Arvo, can you go back to that slide about the lithium versus?
I didn't think they had it versus. It was just.
Bro, yeah, not versus. Yeah. So when you talk about in the lease options or even in the purchase options, in particular, if you could speak about the springs, wouldn't it be cost? I mean, everyone wants to go tempo lithium electric because you don't have to water the batteries, but isn't rounds and usage heavily weighed into that in terms of making a decision to stay with a non-lithium battery, more traditional, because you do less rounds?
It is, and that was actually something that came up here, and I'm glad you brought that up. It's the lithium has a little longer shelf life for us here in the desert, even with less rounds. Batteries here, and we deal with it. Your standard, water-filled batteries. With the cores, there last, if you're lucky, 4 years, no matter what you're doing usage-wise. When you're getting into the lithium, I mean, it's verdict's still out on them because we're not that deep into, having lithium batteries around, but we were given promises that they were going to last a couple of years longer. The cost-wise, when we looked into them, it was more effective for us to try to get 2 more years out of them than to replace batteries in 4 years. And again, that's why this is so facility-based and it's regionally based. I mean, the cost of gas right now, having gas carts is just it's not a good idea. But then again, as electricity costs are going up, charging the lithiums, they last longer on a charge. So like ours don't get plugged in every night.
So did you, how much selling and education did you have to do with your committee or your board in terms of being a source of reality on this for them? Were you heavily involved in that process, and how much education did it take?
It didn't take much education. Our fleet was outdated, and so it was and again, trying to match the standards of the other clubs in the area here. It was a couple, get a couple bids on what the carts were. We were pretty much set that we were going club car regardless. So it was it was an easy sell to the board there. Again, and this is a big one because as costs are going up, you're asking for a lot more money to make a capital purchase on fleet of carts, depending on how many you have there. But what wasn't to, on our end, they knew it was due. It was a couple years overdue. And so it was we had to get our 3 bids and got one from each company. They were fairly close, but we decided to go with the club cars because that's what the club presidents and that's what the board wanted. But it wasn't, we didn't have to make an upsell on it with them. It was, like I said, long overdue. And so it was something that was already built into the time had come. We're gonna make the purchase. And I'm looking over this here, and again, this is from 2020, which is amazing because I just saw one here recently for a 72 cart fleet of lithium, and this is coming from Club Carters or Tempos, that was quite a bit more a month than this was in 2020.
Now, can you speak a little bit about the cart situation at your previous club prior to, well, actually up north? Can you talk a little bit about?
Yeah, so it was, we actually had a rough go. Luckily, again, we had a service contract. The carts, we had an 80 cart fleet. Batteries actually it was on a lease. Batteries went bad after 3 years, so it was still covered because we were on a lease. Had to have them completely switched out, changed ownership, and had to purchase the lease. Well, we bought out of the lease and kept the golf carts for 2 years. And now, actually, in the process of, I was just up there and they were getting ready to sell the golf carts, which is an option if you do buy out of your lease, is reselling the golf carts. I think, again, the resale value on golf carts is great right now, so it was little easier to sell them off. But by waiting those 2 years, the new lease actually went up quite a bit, and so it's going to actually turn into probably returning a little less than just starting a new lease 2 years ago.
So do you have a designated assistant on your team that kind of oversees the cart barn operation? And do you have a maintenance mechanic?
Yeah, here we do. We have a full-time cart mechanic who oversees our outside. He's also our outside manager, oversees all the maintenance on the carts, takes care of our 20 carts, which we only have a 20 cart fleet because we have so many privately owned carts here in the community. Without those privately owned carts, we wouldn't have a full-time cart mechanic.
Because he services their carts as well.
He does, and he does some outsourcing too. If it's something that's, that he'll send it out to one of the cart mechanics, one of the cart shops here in the desert, but he services all theirs. And so I know we're we're fortunate to have a full-time cart mechanic. Where I was at up in the mountains, we had a gentleman who was on our maintenance staff that was our mechanic there, that once a month would take care of the golf carts. And if there was any damage or anything done to a golf cart, we had a form for it, passed it on to him. He would get to it usually within, the first day, but the longest would be about 3 days. But again, that would put a cart out of operation. But again, here, having a full-time cart mechanic, we have somebody that's dedicated to taking care of our fleet of carts, also takes care of all the other carts for the community and for the rest for the HOA. So,
well, and the thing is that the club is owned by the HOA, correct?
Correct.
So it's really it's their club, so it's their maintenance mechanic. It's an amenity and a club benefit for that cart mechanic to, of course, work on their carts and do all their preventative maintenance. And so you guys don't do any. What do you do when you have large events that need more carts? You just rent them?
We rent carts. We have a little bit of a friendly neighbor policy with a couple of the clubs around here, where we'll borrow some carts from them, and when they're in the same case, we'll loan some carts out to them for events like when we do women's team play, men's team play. We hosted the CMAAs this year, and so we'll either borrow carts or bring some carts in to rent, and that, which is renting carts is a crapshoot sometimes.
Sure.
Never really sure.
It's super expensive too.
It is.
It's unbelievably.
It is. For us, any events that we do, that's built into the event cost. We don't do a lot of outside events, but if you're in a position where you're going to have to rent carts more than a couple times a year for special events, you don't have a big enough cart fleet.
Sure.
That's what it really comes down to. And being where I was, like I said, where I was at before. We started with an 80 cart fleet. We went down to a 72 cart fleet. But that was to basically a 72 cart fleet. We'll take care of a 144 person, full field shotgun tournament. And then of course that's also goes for on a busy day, you can fill the golf course with carts. And so that's really important when you get into deciding the size of your cart fleet. And again, that's so facility based, because for instance, here we have 20 golf carts, and on most days, 6 to 8 of them are going to go out. It just depends on who's bringing guests. We have a few members that don't have carts, and so they use ours. But again, it's a 20 cart fleet for us is perfectly serviceable. There's 1, 2, maybe 3 times out of the year where we have to borrow or rent golf carts. And so building that cost into the events, it's a no-brainer for us to have it at our 20 carts. But again, it's so much facility based. What's your facility? Again, it comes down to your mission. Comes down to your facility description, whether you're a private club that has, again, a lot of private carts. You plan on having events, if you're a private club that doesn't allow your own carts or allow, personal carts, you need to make sure that you always have enough carts to take care of your members. And so that's, one of the biggest parts to getting a cart fleet is making sure you have the right size cart fleet.
Any questions or comments? Kent Label, James, Derek Kang, Edwin Ecke, you guys, any questions for Arvo, or any experiences or best practices you want to share with the group before we sign out? Ed, there you are. I knew I could count on you.
Indeed you can. Indeed you can, John, as always. Arvo, good to see you. Thanks for your presentation. I will say everything was well laid out and well said. I'll just add one thing to it and emphasize it. It couldn't be any more to records, especially when you're having to report these to the board, having to report it on your financials, and upkeep. Because if you're going to ever return these carts or sell these carts or anything or God forbid something goes wrong and happens on the golf course to a member or a guest because they weren't taken care of the proper way and you didn't have the proper paperwork to back it up, that would be horrible. So great job today as always, but I just wanted to comment on that.
Well, thank
that's
you,
how
Ed.
much was it helping.
Ed's down at Virginia Country Club in Long Beach for the California Teaching and Coaching Summit that's going on today and tomorrow. Ed, thank you very much. I'll see you in the morning. Derek Kang, Derek Kang, thank you very much for the support that you put in for the LaunchPad and the Catalyst. I see you on there all the time. Thank you very much for the support. You have any best practices or experiences you'd like to share with the group on cart fleet management, or particularly with the Level 1 Work Experience Kit or the testing on cart fleet management?
Not at this time, because I'm watching this one from Korea, and over here is early morning, and I don't work at the golf courses in Korea, and I just work for the simulator. So so far I don't have any question, but it's a great, very helpful for me to understand the cart fleet management and the Level 1 portfolio. Even if I'm a PGA professional, I don't need to study this one anymore, but I want to update my knowledge with this LaunchPad program. And I really appreciate the Southern California SCPGA section for this education. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Derek. And on behalf of the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA, we want to thank Arvo Voip for putting this together and coming on. This is Arvo's second time presenting on the LaunchPad Associate Workshop Series. Thank you, sir, for for putting this together. And we will be sending out the YouTube recording of Arvo's presentation this afternoon. It will have his contact information. If you're viewing this webcast after the fact, feel free to reach out to myself or Arvo. If you're looking to network with other associates that are going through level 1, particularly in terms of cart fleet management and best practices, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you very much for supporting the LaunchPad, and we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Thank you, Arvo.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.